Hey everyone, welcome back to Marvelous Miss Seuss. I have a very special story to share with everybody today. So I'm going to be reading Ernest and the Purple Top Hat. And this book was sent to me by one of my good friends, Sasha, who is a local photographer. So she has a lot of friends who are in the art industry. So whether they're writers, authors, videographers, very talented people. Her friend Carrington wrote this book and asked if I would read it on my channel here. And I thought, how cool, an author wants me to read this book on my channel. So this is Ernest and the Purple Top Hat by Carrington Crothers. Living in the burrows of Old North Village was a young aardvark named Ernest. He always wore a purple top hat. Every aardvark in the village could see Ernest from miles away from his purple top hat. Ernest knew he was different, but Ernest loved his hat and it became a part of him. Ernest took his hat everywhere with him. He wore it at dinner. He wore it in the shower. He even wore it to bed. Everywhere Ernest went, everyone would tell him how much they loved his purple top hat. This would make Ernest smile from ear to ear. The hat beamed a bright purple that would twinkle in the sun. It was an umbrella in the rain. It was a stool while he waited at the bus stop. It was a basket when he went shopping, and a table to eat on when he was hungry. One day Ernest was walking to school, and he had his books, paper, and his pencil all tucked away in his backpack. While he was walking down the path to school, there was a gigantic gust of wind. It came out of nowhere, and Ernest's purple top hat flew off his head like a rocket. He tried to jump and catch it, but his little legs would not let him jump high enough. Once the wind stopped, Ernest tried to find his purple top hat, but it was nowhere to be found. Ernest ran to school and took his seat at his desk. No one even recognized him without his hat. The school bell rang at the end of the day, and it was time to go home. Ernest walked home and searched for his hat along the way, but it was nowhere to be found. He looked in the trees, he looked behind the bushes, he even looked under the rocks. When Ernest arrived home, he told his father what had happened. They went out to search for the purple top hat, but they couldn't find it anywhere. It was then that Ernest's father decided to take him to see Mr. Wilson at the local hat shop. It was full of hats, all different types of hats, big hats, small hats, square hats, pointy hats, and round hats. Mr. Wilson gave Ernest the bright red pointy hat. Ernest wore his hat home, but it kept getting stuck to everything. It got stuck to the tree outside his house. It got stuck to his bed. It even got stuck to his head. Ernest sighed and went back to Mr. Wilson at the hat shop. Mr. Wilson gave Ernest a big green hat to try this time. His new hat was so big, it would fall over his face. He couldn't see his books at school or see where the bus stop was. Ernest went back to the hat shop again, but Mr. Wilson was all out of hats that fit Ernest. Ready to leave without a hat, Ernest sighed in disappointment. Then Ernest looked back at Mr. Wilson with a big grin on his face. "Mr. Wilson, can we make a hat?" asked Ernest. "Why, I thought you'd never ask," said Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson and Ernest then began to make his new hat in the back of Mr. Wilson's store. First, he measured the size of Ernest's head. Then he measured the size of his ears. Then he began drawing Ernest's new hat. Mr. Wilson gave Ernest a list of materials to get for the hat. Ernest went and got a few of his friends to help. They were all excited to help. Mr. Wilson told them to go to the forest to collect silk from the cocoons in the trees to stitch the hat together, tall grass by the pond to make the hat a bright green, wool from Mr. Miller's sheep farm, Ernest and his friends carried everything back to Mr. Wilson's hat shop. They were now ready to make a new hat. Mr. Wilson taught Ernest how to make fabric from the materials he gathered. They put all the materials into the fabric maker, which turned the silk from the cocoons, tall grass from the pond, and all the wool from Mr. Miller's sheep farm into a beautiful green fabric to make Ernest's new hat. Once they made the fabric, Ernest helped Mr. Wilson stitch it all together. It would be a stool to sit on, an umbrella in the rain, a basket for food, a table to eat on. After a lot of wrong hats and mishaps, Ernest can now walk home with his head held high, wearing a hat he made himself. And that was Ernest and the Purple Top Hat. And Carrington put her little author bio in the back here. I loved this story. I think what I really learned from this was that Ernest could make the best out of a really sad and disappointing situation. You know, he lost something very special to him, but he was able, to work with his friends and Mr. Wilson to find a solution. So thank you so much to Sasha and for Carrington for getting me this book. I'm so glad that I could share it on this channel. For my kiddos out there, I'd love to hear about a special item that you have that means a lot to you. So Ernest had his purple top hat that was super special to him. For me, when I was younger, I had a teddy bear that really meant a lot to me. When you pressed a certain button on its chest, it sang a song to you. So that's my special item. So I'd like to hear what your special item is. Thanks for tuning in and watching today's video. I look forward to making more videos on this channel. I miss you all very much. I hope that you're staying well. Even though it's raining and stuff outside, you're able to do all kinds of fun activities inside with your families. So I hope to see you soon. Bye.